Hi, everybody, and welcome to the YouTube video production that my adult children like to call the equivalent of a 5-year-old yammering into his mother's phone. Um, yes, I realize there's a terrible dearth of production values, makeup, editing, and, class in my video productions. But y'all should know that my children tried to raise me right. And all of this is my fault and not theirs. Anyway, last week my son did some editing. He edited my slides into the production. He doesn't have time to do that now, and frankly, if I tried to do it, I'd make a hash of it. So this is just going to be your basic middle-aged teacher woman in the middle of her living room doing a YouTube video about writing, crafting tips, how to write romance, and how to write other things too. Anyway, my book, crafting category, Romance, The Art of Fiction Haiku, it's a really long title, I probably messed it up, will be out next week. I'm super excited, which is funny because I honestly don't expect many people to read it. But if they do, I will be all over that. It'll be fantastic. But in the meantime, I'm still going to do this little production here because I enjoy it, mostly. Keeps my brain sharp. All right. So last week, we talked about the literary foils. And literary foils are the things, are the characters that are put into a story to show us what our hero is lacking, what he needs in order to successfully complete his hero's journey. And if he finds these things, usually this is not going to be a tragedy, this is going to be an epic adventure, and he can complete his journey. And if he doesn't find these things, well, it's a tragedy. So Hamlet, which was my example, could not find these things that he was lacking in himself, and he failed miserably and died and had to have his best friend and the guy he loved, probably non-platonically, report after him in death. How very sad. But the foil, the idea of a foil, of characters showing us what our main character is lacking, works really, really, really well in romance as well. And the thing is that, okay, as we adults go through our adult journey, when we first start out, we are often incomplete. And when we are looking for a romantic partner, it is a cliche, thank you, Jerry Maguire, but to say you complete me, people assume that means that, well, this person who needed to be completed was not self-actualized, or not a complete person, and did not do all of their internal work. It's not true. What it means is that as individuals, we are lonely creatures. And to find the person who fills that part in you that you cannot fill yourself. Okay, and there's a part in everybody that really they can't fill themselves, that it will not make them a better person just to walk around with this lonely void. If they find that person, that's romance. That's pairing up. That's two people becoming a better cohesive whole. So to have romantic foils, both heroes, okay, hero and heroine, hero, heroine, both heroes need to have a void, and both heroes need to fit together. Yin and yang. Okay, the romantic foil. Think about it like a hug. Okay, if you are hugging somebody, doesn't matter who you're hugging, okay, people don't naturally fit together. Our bodies are not built like puzzle pieces from the outside. There is no, if you put your shoulder here and this here, then you are going to be able to hug all sorts of people. You got to be careful. I'm super tall. I have a lot of friends who are super short. If I am not careful, my cleavage gets them right in the face. Boom. I have got to adjust my height and be careful and angle my body. Otherwise, my life would be unbearably awkward. Like it's not. Anyway, people have to put their planes and their angles together. And then they can have that moment of human contact that is the perfect hug. And if we think about two lovers together and a hug, think about it in silhouette. That people adjust themselves and allow the other person to fill in their empty spaces. And that's what a good literary foil does to characters that feel real to us. And I have a few examples. Let's start with the obvious one, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. And we could not write, we have not bettered the things that made Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy great after over 200 years. That's how long have they been? Excuse me, Amy Lane does math. Yes, over 200 years. Okay. Elizabeth's family was a little bit blue stocking. The girls were wild. There wasn't a lot of social strictures put upon them. They had just enough money to be comfortable. They did not have enough money to make sure everybody was going to be set for life. Mr. Darcy owned a castle. He owned so much land that he had to worry about the people on his land making their living. He had such a big house that it was opened up for people to come view like a museum. He had responsibilities. He had to look good for the world. He could not allow his reputation to be besmirched because that was all sorts of bad. He also had to protect his little sister, and he couldn't let these Hayden women destroy his rep, destroy his cred with his sister. And those two very conflicting, very conflicting mindsets, those two conflicting experiences and upbringings and backgrounds were enough for us to see the things that the other person was lacking. Elizabeth Bennet had amazing spirit. She had loyalty. She was so smart. But she had a big blind spot as far as her sisters were concerned, and her sisters were heading for trouble. Mr. Darcy was responsible and he was reputable. But oh my gosh, he was a dick. He did not know how to people, and he did not practice his people skills, and he didn't understand that he had to practice his people skills in order to be a better person. And Elizabeth made him want to people better. These two people, and of course the book is this thick. I've taught it to high school students before. There are many, many, many other places where these two people complemented and filled in the other's empty spots. And you could take any angle, from the pride of one to the prejudice of the other. You could take any angle of any one of them and find a place where Elizabeth filled Mr. Darcy's empty place and Mr. Darcy filled Elizabeth's. And that nothing says romantic foil better than Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. I could stop right there, but I won't. The next one I have is Jane Eyre and Mr. Rochester. Now, Jane, very otherworldly. Her heart is true and pure, and she wants to do nothing more than do good in this world. And also, she feels as though she's missing passion. She feels as though she is missing a deep and abiding connection with another human being, and she wants that. And Mr. Rochester provides it. Mr. Rochester does not care about the social conventions that so seem to root Jane in her loneliness. Mr. Rochester will steamroller over any objections and conveniently forget about the insane wife in the attic. He will completely ignore all of those social conventions that Jane Eyre finds important. Okay. And the thing is that Jane needs to look past this idea that she needs to be good. She needs to be a better person. If she was any better, she would be like the guy she turns down who just wants her because of her virtue. If she needs to love for love's sake. And Mr. Rochester needs to learn some principles. He had a wife upstairs that he had not dealt with, and he was trying to marry a 19-year-old girl. How old was she? I forget that detail, but I do know he had a wife upstairs, and bad, Mr. Rochester, bad. Learn some moral principles, and then you get to fulfill your need of your other. Okay. But these two people had a lot to learn from each other. And that is a good romantic foil. Eve and Rourke. Okay. J.D. Robb's series, which is more than 50 books at this point. Eve starts out a poor street cop. Now it's 40 years into the future. When these books were first written, it was 60 or 70 years into the future. But 40 years in the future, we're in the urban wars part of the In Death series now. For those of you who have read it, that's probably that feels very real, I'm sure. But Eve starts out a beat cop. Okay, she is Lieutenant Eve Dallas, and she believes in the job, and she is all about the job, and she has tortured moments from her past. She has parts of her life that she has blocked out. They were so horrible. It takes us 25, 30 books to figure out everything that happened to her that made her block that crap out. Okay? But she is determined to do everything good, to do everything by the book, and she will find the murderer because she understands the mind of a killer. And I'm not going to tell you how, because that would be to give away spoilers for the entire series. But this is Eve. She's hard-headed. She has zero play in her emotional makeup. Rourke has made his fortune in illegal means. And now that he has a vast fortune, once again, he's another guy with a castle. Once he has a vast fortune, he has made himself mostly legitimate, but he still enjoys a little walk on the wrong side of the law because he's so good at it and nobody catches him. And he plays with the law, he plays with his life, he enjoys women, he enjoys fast cars, he enjoys opulence, and he cannot for the life of him understand what there is about a poor civil servant who lives in a crappy little apartment that has so incredibly fascinated him. And it turns out that they both have some of the same damage. And Rourke has overcome his damage by being highly successful. And Eve has overcome her damage by making sure her damage doesn't happen to anybody else. And together, Rourke gives Eve license to play, license to enjoy her life. And Eve gives Rourke that moral center that he was gravitating towards being a totally a decent guy. He's never going to lose his slightly reprehensible edge, but he is going to use his thief powers and his tech powers for good from now on. And part of that is he just finds it so much more exciting than being a thief. But part of it is for her, that he will be a better person. And these are foils. They fill in the empty places in each other. They make our people want to be better. And we're going to talk about the romantic foil who doesn't make it next week. And I love this concept. This is one of my favorite concepts in romance. We call it the Bellamy. And that is going to be next week's little mini lesson. In the meantime, thank you for listening to me yammer, and have a good week. Stay safe, everybody. Take care.